All right. Hi there, everyone. Welcome to Tech Tuesday. My name is Tom Levine, Cornerstone's technical specialist and commission specialist. And today we're going to be covering what a VPN is and why you as a broker need one, along with a few of the other distinct differences between the types of VPNs out there. I will just say for a more comprehensive sort of deep dive into VPNs, I'd recommend looking at last year's presentation, but that one we went really into the weeds. So today's presentation is going to hopefully focus a little bit more on more of the general aspects of what a VPN is, why you might want to use one, and why it's required by HIPAA. So without further ado, let's get started. On some announcements. First, housekeeping. If you have a question, please feel free to type it into the question box at any time. We will answer questions at the end of the presentation as well, and I will be putting links in the chat box. If you have trouble accessing any of those, please feel free to reach out to me and let me know. You can do so over the phone at 513-487-5390, or by emailing me at tlevine@crnstone.com. Just be sure to include Tech Tuesday in your header because I do filter out by headings. Also, if you have any other questions or feel like you need something addressed urgently, please feel free to text it in chat as well. I do like to wait for the end of the presentation to answer questions, but if it's something relevant to what I think I'm talking about at the moment, I might go ahead and answer it then. So you never know. Feel free to type questions. Also, don't forget about our marketing consultation program. Cornerstone's now offering a full service marketing consultation program where our in-house marketing expert, Jess Larkin, will help optimize your brand and take it to the next level. Some of the services offered are brand audits, social media management, print marketing, email marketing, onboarding kits, and even more than that. All brokers participating in this program receive a free brand evaluation workbook, and you can contact Jess Larkin today for more pricing and information at jlarkin, Larkin, at crnstone.com. And lastly, feel free to look into our Autopilot program. Autopilot is actually a really cool program where you use us as your broker for services that you might not necessarily offer directly. It's part of our agency services program, and it's designed to help you make plans for your businesses, your clients, and family, no matter the situation. And among the services provided by this are the Autopilot, if I can talk today, client referral program, parachute succession planning, our flight plan retirement assistance, and our co-pilot service agreements. As an ASP broker, you're the pilot of your own business, and we're your flight crew. We create a customized plan for you based on your specific needs to ensure that you, your business, and your family are all covered. Become part of our agency services program today at www.crnstone.com/agency-services-program. I'm going to type that link here into the chat real quick. It's www.crnstone.com/agency-services-program. There we go. So if you're interested in that, please feel free to click on the link. So finally, we get into the nitty-gritty of the subject at hand today, VPNs. People ask me all the time what a VPN is, and it's difficult to describe sometimes. But the easiest thing to say about it is it's a virtual private network, which is just what VPN stands for. The techie explanation is that it is an encrypted tunnel connection to a secured web server, which, well, not being too wordy, has a lot of jargon in it. In English, it's an internet connection that is encrypted and connected to another computer, and that other computer does your browsing for you. And there are a number of different advantages to this, actually. First is that your traffic is password protected. That password protection is really more relating to what the tunnel is itself. But to simplify it, basically a VPN is a secured connection between you and another computer that uses a password for you to access. that password is translated into a really long math equation that gives you a really big number. And that number can be used to sort of decipher what you're actually transmitting online. Basically, it jumbles all the data going over the connection so that unless you have the key number or the same encryption software, you can't really figure out what data is being sent. So for example, if I was using TunnelBear, just out of the top of my head, to encrypt my connection to this server, the other end would have to have TunnelBear's sort of encryption key or sort of access to what TunnelBear uses to jumble data in order to decipher it in a timely manner. The larger the key, the better it is, and like a key, using it's kind of like a key that makes a new lock each time it's used on the data. And then you throw the lock at whoever you're trying to send the message to, and they have the same key so they can unlock it, but the lock is different every time. And so the information contained in the lock is different every time. That's sort of the easiest way to describe it. Both parties, both the sending and receiving parties of these messages need the same equation and the same key to really understand each other. So it's a way of securing data that gets sent, sort of like putting a puzzle on the front of a letter, and you have to solve the puzzle in order to get to the contents. That being said, I've said the word tunnel a lot, so it would make sense to explain it. Tunnels are how connections to VPNs are encrypted and secured. And basically, think of the image on our bottom right. That's sort of what tunneling is. Information on the internet is communicated within packets. A packet is what is considered the payload in this diagram at the bottom right. Information on that packet is then surrounded with the address to where the info is being sent. That's called a header. So you have data on the inside and the header sort of wrapped around it like a kernel. So like think that the information is like sort of like a train actually, and you slap a destination on it and it goes there. A tunnel is something that surrounds all of that information and gives it a new header. The stuff that surrounds the general information is the encryption. So basically what a VPN will do is it will establish a connection between you and a server that they own. And within that connection, any packet being sent using that is encoded or encrypted. Because that encryption then has a new header slapped on it, it's sort of like wrapping your information you're trying to send and receive in like wrapping paper. No one can sort of see inside and know what you're really sending. It sort of becomes a mystery. And all you know is who it's to and who it's from. That information is then sent to your, server that is actually going to do the browsing for you. Snoops who are trying to like sort of view your data, maybe from a man-in-the-middle attack that Jeff mentioned a while ago in more of our technical segments, they only see jumbled up information then. They don't see your original packet that you sent. They don't see the original header. All they see is that this packet that is encrypted is going to a VPN server. And because that's all they can see, they can't really see any private health information or anything else that would be contained in the payload of the packet that's being sent. So basically, you take your information, you wrap it up so no one can see, and you throw it across the internet to your VPN provider. And that's sort of what a secured tunnel does. So what does that really mean for you, the client? Well, the VPNs then take the information you've sent them and does all of your search requests for you, or does all of your browsing for you. So let's say you were watching, YouTube. YouTube wouldn't think that your computer where you are is looking up this information. It actually thinks that the server that you're accessing is looking up the information. So basically, it's like a remote game of telephone, except the final person in between who's giving the other person information doesn't know who initially requested it. And you don't actually lose any of the data involved due to miscommunication. basically the takeaways from it all are that when you're using a VPN, websites don't know that you're the one who's looking at them, and your internet service provider doesn't actually know what you're really doing, what you're looking up, or what you're really accessing. All they see is that you're talking to a VPN, and that's all that any hacker would see as well. So all of that being said, and I know that was kind of wordy, why do you need a VPN? Well, for one thing, they're required by HIPAA if you're trying to access secure health information from a remote server. The exact definition or line is you must protect network access with a VPN, endpoint security, two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and session timeouts. Basically, translated, what that means is if you're accessing secure information online, you've got to use a VPN that is fully encrypted and has good verification processes to know who's logging in and using it. For private use, what this means is that if you're getting throttled data connections from your internet service provider because, say, you're just watching Netflix, but the guy down the hall is doing work, they provide information to both of you. They're going to prioritize the work over the Netflix, depending on who pays more. You remove that step when you use a VPN, and so they can't really know what you're doing, so they won't throttle your connection. It also gets around regional content blocks. Remember what I said before. When you're using a VPN, you're talking to a server, and that server is then making all these requests. What that means is that if that server that you're accessing is in another country, you get to view the internet as though you were in that country. I find this really useful personally because I'm a big Netflix addict. If I use a VPN to access Netflix, my account's the same, all that information, the login's the same, but I can tell Netflix, hey, I'm actually traveling, I'm in India now, and I can get all of the Bollywood shows that aren't available here in the US. Same sort of thing if you're trying to access any show that's just not available on American Netflix. Maybe it's available in like Singapore. If you have a good VPN, you can tell it, hey, use this server in Singapore, and you can get access to all of the Netflix information that would be viewable from that country. So it's a good way of getting around regional blocks. You can do the same sort of thing for news sites, actually. A lot of news sites like Alibaba have, well, not necessarily Alibaba, but a bunch of different news websites like Guardian or what's the big one? I'm blanking offhand, but they will actually screen different articles in different languages for different areas. So if you're trying to use a really big newspaper, and let's say you want to view the international version, but it's not available in your country, you can go to a different country and view that. People also use VPNs to get around the blockers on Chinese internet if they're visiting that country as well. So these are good ways to get around regional content blocks if you're traveling. So that being said, what exactly makes a commercial VPN good? Commercial VPN being one available to the general public that you or I might use normally, just browsing at home. The first thing is you'd want them to provide access to their own service to browse from. And there are a lot of these that are available, but none of these are really going to be what we need to tunnel into a secured work server or do full work remote stuff, sort of. And I'll get into that in a moment. But some examples of some common ones that I know I've heard of are ExpressVPN, NordVPN, Private Internet Access, CyberGhost, IPVanish, Surfshark, ViperVPN, PrivateVPN, Hotspot Shield, and StrongVPN. And those are just the top 10 ones I looked up for 2021. So if that's all I can find right now, if I just Google top 10, there are a bunch more out there. And there really are a ton of VPN options. One of the new things that's been coming out with VPNs now is VPNs with a free tier. And you got to kind of be careful about those, actually. Typically, free tier VPNs will limit the amount of data you can send to them, so you only get a certain amount of use out of them per month. And they're really more considered free trials. But one of the things that I've noticed that they've started doing is they've started logging all the information you're actually, accessing. So if you're using a free VPN, you might want to read what they're actually giving you versus what you're actually getting. It just seems sort of like a privacy issue to me, but I digress. What makes one VPN better than another? First of all, encryption strength, clearly. They typically feature their encryption strength prominently on their website. The standard for right now, at least, is AES 256. And what that is a security protocol where the number is the number of bits in their encryption keys. So think about it this way. It's a 256-digit number that then has to be put into their equation to decrypt your information. So that's pretty dang secure, I'd say. It takes, a few computers a lot of time to work on that, more time than is feasible for a lot of computers to try to break the encryption. That's why you see a lot of hackers trying to go the social engineering route now. There's also the consideration of the number of remote servers and where they're located. Different VPN providers have different numbers of servers in different locations around the world. If you're trying to use a private VPN just to, browse around, see things from a different location, then this can matter to you quite a bit. The other one that I mentioned sort of a little earlier is that you don't want them to log your data. VPNs can sometimes choose to keep your browsing history on file with them, which kind of defeats the whole point of a VPN in the first place, in my opinion. You're trying to avoid people tracking your browsing history. You're trying to avoid people trying to, scoop the secure information you're trying to look at. So you want to make sure that you look at, what data they actually keep from your browsing and what data they choose not to. That can be a really key factor in decision making. And lastly is the reliability of this connection. Some servers can connect better than others, and depending on the server connection you're accessing, it could slow up your internet speed. Adding any sort of communication link in a chain will always slow down your connection no matter what. It's why sometimes using a VPN, if you're working from home, you'll notice that you have a little bit more lag. And actually, we do have a question that I should probably address at this point. Aziz asks, so VPNs can also be hacked? And my response is, everything can be hacked. It's really kind of hard to make a system that is 100% foolproof. And yeah, technically, if someone had the encryption key to, unlock the tunnel that you're using, then yeah, they could listen in on everything that you're sending over it. The chance of that happening, though, are slim to none. AES 256 encryption, if I'm remembering correctly from last year's presentation, that level of encryption would take an average computer about, I think it was something like 10,000 years to decrypt, working on its own. It was some really, really large number. It was insane. It would take one computer working alone all of that time to do it. Now, if you get a bunch of computers together and pool their resources, then maybe, just maybe, you could crack it in a more reliable time, say maybe a year. But that would just take a lot of effort. And honestly, most people who use a VPN don't transmit information that's really worth cracking. So a lot of hackers don't really do it. Think of encryption as more of a deterrent for people to pool all their resources together and just try to get in. It's possible to break into them, but it's really dubious if it'll ever happen. Breaking this sort of encryption would sort of be like trying to steal the Declaration of Independence, not to steal any major movie titles. It's technically possible, but do I think it'll happen? Not really. It's that sort of level of difficulty. Anyway, my recommendations for private VPNs are actually these three. They're the same ones that I mentioned last year, and really, my recommendations haven't changed much. But what did change is TunnelBear. So I'll get into that in a moment. First, there's ExpressVPN. It's free for 30 days on trial, and that free tier is something that's actually fine to use. It has servers located all over the US in 90 plus locations. They don't log the data that you're sending over them. And there are a lot of different deals on costs. Personally, my favorite one is their 15-month deal. It's only $100. You get 15 months of their service, and that equates to about $667 per month of this deal. They after that will default to a normal standard tier of $12.95 unless you tell them you want to renew on the multi-year plan again, and they'll just keep that rolling for you. You also get unlimited speed and data use through them, as well as no IP tracking, and it works with more than just PCs as well. If you have a game system, you might want to put this on so that people can't actually figure out where you are, or if you've got, say, a phone even that you want to put a VPN on. ExpressVPN will happily, give you their app and let you access their VPN service from your phone too. So they're available with a lot more than just PC devices. The second one is CyberGhost. There is no free trial, and it is the most expensive. It's $12.95 per month flat, or the 3-year fee of $418.86. And that's what makes them the most expensive option in my mind. Yes, the same, flat rate cost per month at the end of it all is the same as ExpressVPN, but that 3-year plan is really not as valuable as the $99 15-month trial. Also, you get unlimited use out of it, same as ExpressVPN. It offers the largest number of servers, compared to anything on the market in a bunch of different countries. And it's also actually compatible with most add-ons and antivirus softwares. I listed that there, but realistically, most VPNs should be compatible with almost any antivirus. There are a few that will clash, but none of these recommendations will. Lastly, there's TunnelBear, and it's the only free tier VPN I recommend. And the reason is because I don't recommend its free tier, I recommend its paid tier. It's only $10, which makes it a little bit cheaper than all the other VPNs, and it will remove the 500 megabyte cap, and it does have fewer advanced features than the other ones. ExpressVPN and CyberGhost have things like automatic kill switches that will disconnect you from the internet if it detects anyone even trying to access your VPN connection. It's the man-in-the-middle kind of attack, which is cool, but not necessarily necessary. TunnelBear kind of sees that and goes, okay, well, if they're trying to access, they've actually got to break through the VPN's, encryption first. We'll see if we can detect them actually accessing any content of anything before we kick you off. Or don't even kick you off, honestly. Sometimes they will notify you if they see anything going on, but that's what I mean by fewer advanced features. It might seem to be a little less secure, but it's not really that big a difference, in my opinion, for what most people do with it. Like I said, these are all consumer VPNs, and I wouldn't use them to access private health information from a company server. But yeah, it's a little bit cheaper. It runs a little slower, and it was acquired by McAfee, so it might inundate you with ads from McAfee. But honestly, it's a pretty secure system, and they have some pretty good encryption there. So I like them. We do actually have another question here from Kathleen, and you're not quite specific enough, I think, but I'll give you the answer for all three. It's, can you use it on multiple devices with one subscription? And the answer to that typically is no. TunnelBear, the answer is no. CyberGhost, the answer is no. And ExpressVPN, the answer is also no. The reason being, the connection that you pay for is typically for one computer. Some of the deals for some of these gives you access for up to 4 devices. I believe ExpressVPN's payment plan is for 1 device, same with CyberGhost. TunnelBear, I think, is up to 4, but I can double check that and get back in touch with you as well on that, Kathleen. The reason that most of them are for 1 device is because the software that they give you can only really be installed on 1 device. Each one has a different sort of key or general equation, and they also like to make you pay for trying to connect on multiple devices. So that's just sort of how it is. It's like buying a software license for Microsoft Word. You can only install that on 1 computer. Great question. So with that being said, It is a little bit different to use a commercial VPN from using a workplace VPN. Typically, these are set up by a IT team for the company, and what they do is basically the same thing as a commercially available VPN, except it's connecting to a very specific place. Instead of connecting to a VPN server, it's connecting to the work server that's owned by your company. Because it's connecting into your company server, it typically needs to be set up by an IT team or by a service provider that you hire out. They have to actually come out and look at your hardware typically, or they just send you software to be installed by an IT team. I wouldn't try to set up this kind of thing yourself, just because if you set it up incorrectly, you can end up not securing things appropriately. The difference is it connects your computer to your work server via the tunnel, not to a public server. And typically this connection is secured end to end. What that means is the data you send off to the VPN, and then the VPN sends off to the server, is then encrypted when that server sends it back along that line, and all parts of what that server accesses are encrypted as well. Typically with with the private VPNs I was talking about earlier, it'll encrypt the connection from your computer to the server and the server to your computer. It will not encrypt the traffic from itself to the websites you're accessing or to the information you're accessing and back. That's one of the problems with AT&T's network. And while it is still HIPAA certified to use a VPN like that, you want end-to-end connection on a corporate VPN because it'll be accessing secure information within your corporate server. Also, to enable this connection, you typically need to be able to access your private corporate intranet, which is something that a typical VPN won't give you access to. So that being said, what are some of my recommendations? NordVPN Teams, Viper VPN, Perimeter 81, and AT&T VPN are all examples of corporate VPNs that will actually come out and set up a VPN connection to a private work server. In my opinion, NordVPN Teams is probably the best, followed by Perimeter 81, Viper VPN, and then AT&T VPN. And the reason is because of professionalism. NordVPN is available not just for this sort of VPN work, but also for that private VPN service that I mentioned earlier. So not only could you use NordVPN to connect to a work server, but also then use it to connect out, to the internet in general, and use it like a normal VPN as well. That sort of versatility is something that I like, and they've been in the game the longest. Then followed by Perimeter 81, also because of professionalism. They're a really great VPN provider, and I have never heard any complaints. Viper VPN is then followed because they're more of a newcomer, and then AT&T is last in my opinion because they don't add specific encryption to the server that they're offering to create a VPN to access. So your communication to the server is secure, but then whatever the server itself accesses, like private health information, that level of it is not included with the AT&T VPN. So that's why I don't like them as much. That being said, you'll probably notice that there are no prices listed for this, and that's because the price can vary. It all depends on your own personal IT infrastructure setup and how much you're willing to pay to have them come out and work with you. Typically, you will contact a resource center for them, and they will send someone out, look at your infrastructure, and then quote you a price. I'm going to link all of these services here in the chat. Just 1 second. I'm just gonna copy and paste these into the messenger. And all of those are labeled by their VPN type if you feel like looking into these. So back to the presentation. I'm happy to open up questions at this time, but I do feel like it's probably worthwhile to go back over some of the general differences one more time. The difference between a corporate VPN and a regular VPN that you would just buy online is what it's accessing. And this is where it ties into HIPAA. A normal VPN that you just buy will encrypt any communication between you and a secure server that the company owns, and then it will be able to access private health information online. This would be from UHC or from whatever website you go out to. You don't actually need a VPN for this kind of service, but I'd recommend it if you're going to be looking at private health information anyway and just working on your own remotely. That being said, if you have a database, that's where you really need the corporate VPN to access things. If you're trying to remotely access like a work computer that's located far away from you, that's when you would need a corporate VPN. You wouldn't need one of those just to, browse online. So if you're trying to just access private health information available from websites, or you're inputting private health information into websites, that private VPN that I showed you first, that's really all you'll actually need. A VPN that you're going to use for corporate access is something like what we'd use here at Cornerstone. So a VPN that'll actually access secure private health information from a secured service. What we have here using our system AGB, that's something that we have to actually use our computers located here at the office to do. So we had to have a separate VPN set up that connected our work from home computers to the office to then access that information. If you don't store private health information on site, you don't have to tunnel into, your work to actually access sort of a private, repository of info. You do not need the corporate level of a VPN. You just need the private one. And that's a level of distinction that I think people sometimes gloss over. So that being said, I'm happy to open the floor to questions. First from Jody Myers. I've been told that a VPN is not needed with SharePoint or OneDrive to store your data. My thoughts on that. That's actually kind of true. The reason that it's true is because SharePoint and OneDrive both already use encryption on their connection. It's sort of like that corporate VPN that I was mentioning a little bit earlier. So it is a VPN that allows the data communicated from your computer and to the data communicated by OneDrive or SharePoint to be encrypted on that channel. Because that level of it is encrypted, you don't need to then encrypt it again by using a VPN. That being said, I always recommend a VPN. VPNs are incredibly useful, and they're just another layer of protection. If you're not going to, use it to encrypt, just anything you're accessing online, it's useful for a lot of other things, and I just recommend getting one personally. I found that it actually sped up my internet connection at home because my ISP was throttling me. So I like VPNs quite a bit. We have another question from Kathleen Brown, which is which personal use ones are HIPAA compliant? And that gets a little bit tricky to say. There are so many different VPNs that are personal that it's hard to really say what you mean by having a HIPAA compliant VPN. The HIPAA compliant VPN is really more needed if you're trying to access information stored on a work network. So the corporate VPN is what they're referring to there. As far as what VPN is compliant with HIPAA, almost any of them should be. But you'd have to look into the specifics of the VPN to make sure it hits all of these specific technical requirements. So long as it has an AES encryption and it does not log the data that you're accessing, it is HIPAA compliant, and you can use it to just generally browse online. But you wouldn't want to use one of the personal VPNs to access private health information stored on a local corporate network because A, it probably won't be able to access it, and B, you would need a corporate VPN set up for that. So sorry for kind of a nuanced answer there, Kathleen, but basically, so long as it's encrypted and people at the VPN that you're accessing don't log your data, it should be fine. Also, just another note, this presentation that I've given is sort of a general overview of VPNs. But last year, I really did a deep dive, and I focused more on what makes the encryption strong, what exact aspects of a VPN make it a secure VPN versus, making it just one that anyone should access. And if you're interested in learning a lot more about that, I'd recommend going to our resource center under webinar series, and then accessing our Tech Tuesday repository. Our 2019 presentation or 2020 presentation is available if you just scroll under 2020 and go to encryption and VPNs and why you need one. This presentation goes a lot more in depth than I did here, and I think if you have any interest in sort of the deep depths of how encryption works and what makes that all function, that's probably a presentation more suited to you. So I'd recommend looking there if you have any deep dive questions. And of course, if you have any questions you don't want to ask me at this time, please feel free to give me a call. My number is 513-487-5390. And you can also reach me at tlevine@sierraandstone.com. Thanks again for attending our presentation, and I will be on for any additional questions, probably for the next 5 minutes at least. Thank you.